We are live.
All right, wonderful. Let me get on to, this is not the governing body. Hold on, let me get on to the correct agenda. Oh, we don't? Okay, we apparently are still having some, do we have it now? Some access issues with Zoom. And do we have some attendees, I believe, on Zoom for a presentation? Can we get some assistance with promoting individuals? All right. Have we figured out our technical difficulties yet? Okay, wonderful. It is 5:03 p.m. Let's go ahead and call the Quality of Life Committee meeting to, I'm going very slow, order. Now we have everybody in seats. Can I please get a roll call?
Absolutely. Counselor Castro,
Presente.
Counselor Chavez, Counselor Garcia,
Present.
Counselor Faulkner.
Here.
Madam Chair.
I am here, and thank you, Loretta, for being here today and filling in for Marcella. We're happy to have you.
Good to be here. You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Wonderful, thank you. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Any changes from staff or committee? And if not, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the consent agenda. Nothing was pulled ahead of time. Anything that anyone would like to pull now? And if not, can I get a motion?
To approve. Second.
Motion and a second. May I please have a roll call?
Absolutely. Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Castro.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you so much. All right, moving on to our two presentations. So we do have two presentations tonight. I do want to say we have two members of the committee that need to be have engagements. So if we can be out of here by 6:30, that would be wonderful. So we will work our best on being as efficient as possible. Our first presentation, it's an overview of Main Street, New Mexico, and potential programming opportunities for Santa Fe. We have Johanna Nelson, Office of Economic Development Director. I believe online we should have Daniel Gutierrez, New Mexico Main Street Director, and Lucas Pedraza, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correct, New Mexico Main Street Project Coordinator, and Amy Barnhart, the New Mexico Main Street Revitalization Specialist. And Director Nelson, I will pass it on to you to lead the charge.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for zooming in with us.
Sure,
you, ma'am.
appreciate it. I'm not sure if you guys have a copy of the presentation or if you want one of us to share our screen.
Let's go ahead and share our screen. Director Nelson, were you going to share it from here or pull it up from here? We have Ms. Olguin pulling it up from here, so we should be good to go.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you, Madam Chair. Thank you, counselors. And hi, Daniel. Hi, Amy. So happy that you can be here with us this evening. Just a little bit of preface. We just recently brought on a new economic development specialist, if you recall, using ARPA funding that's focused on the downtown area as a pilot to explore a geographic or a place-based approach to supporting our business community. We are also very hopeful that this person, Lealia, we call her Lee Nelson, would be able to explore working with New Mexico Main Street and utilizing this program throughout the city. So we brought on these great folks to give us an overview of the program so our counselors can understand about our current projects, our previous projects, and what would be needed to explore the Main Street program for the city of Santa Fe. I think we're
Great.
bringing up the presentation.
All right.
And then I am trying to pull it up in Civic Clerk. I'm having a hard time with that. I'm actually not getting it pulling up at Civic Clerk at all. Is anybody able to pull it up? I know it was emailed to us.
There it goes.
You were able to get it up on Civic Clerk? Okay.
All right.
Interesting.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, good to know. We will get that fixed as soon as we can re-access the meeting tomorrow. So Loretta, if you can make note of that to just apparently in Civic Clerk it's twisted. So if we can reorient it tomorrow when we can.
Okay, well, I guess I'll just jump in then. Thanks for having us. My name is Daniel Gutierrez. I'm the director of the New Mexico Main Street program, and I do have Amy Barnhart joining me with the presentation. Just to start off, a little bit of our program. We are a program of the New Mexico Economic Development Department. If you could go to the next page, please. We're an asset-based community economic development program, and we're also part of Main Street America. And we're actually celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. We have been with Main Street America since 1985, and we are, I think, one of 46 coordinating programs throughout the country, and we basically work on community-based revitalization initiatives with a practical, adaptable framework for downtown transformations, and we do this through the Main Street approach, and primarily focusing on areas of economic vitality, supporting businesses and the business environment in a district, entrepreneurs, design, which we really kind of focus more on the look and feel and design of a district, promoting businesses, and finally organizations, developing local organizations that can really engage and drive that economic development work in the district. Next, please. So we are an organization that has a number of different programs. Our main one, and this is our 32 Main Street districts and programs throughout the state. There's a map you can see with all the different areas that we're currently working in or have worked in the recent past. This is the primary program that's focused with National Main Street or Main Street America, National Main Street Center, and it's focused on district-wide redevelopment in a district. And we have 32, as I said, designated districts. Where we're basically working with a nonprofit on the local level, and then they have service contracts with their local governments, kind of a three-tiered partnership, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But we also have an Arts and Cultural District program, which we have 13. I think 12 of them are state authorized throughout the state, and they're basically more of a designation attached to a Main Street program because they have the arts and cultural assets to really drive a lot of their work in their district. And then we have project-based initiatives, which instead of doing district-wide development, we're really more focused on doing one economic development project over a 12 to 18 month time frame. And aside from that, we do have a capital outlay program as well, where we award funds to Main Street and Arts and Cultural District programs for public infrastructure upgrades. And over the past 5 years, we've gotten $38 million in capital outlay from the state legislature that we've reallocated to our local communities for a lot of these public infrastructure projects. Next page, please. So as I said, it's a partnership between Main Street's a partnership between the state, local government partners, and local revitalization partners, which is our Main Street organizations. In Santa Fe, we never had I mean, we're located in Santa Fe. Our main office is in Santa Fe, but we've never actually had a Main Street program in Santa Fe. We have done some project-based initiatives, but I know this is something we've wanted to do for a long time. I know Albuquerque has, I think, 5 programs that we work with in Albuquerque, but we've yet to be able to get a program started in Santa Fe to this point. But it's all of us, this work works because we're all kind of working together to try to really drive projects, and all of whether it's the local government, the state government, or the local revitalization partner, we all kind of have different roles we play. Local government partner provides some funding for the local program, and it's usually through a service contract, where they're they have a service contract with the scope of work that they are using to really drive the work and engage in the economic development activities in that district. But they also if we have capital outlay, we can't give capital outlay to a local organization, so we give it to local government partners. So they do serve as fiscal agents for that funding as well. As far as state coordinating program, we provide technical assistance and training to our local programs, and that's all free of charge. It's, our program, I have 5 state staff, and I have 12 contractors, professional contractors that work with our local program to provide technical assistance. They're in the field a lot. Amy Barnhart is one of our we call them revitalization specialists, and she focuses, her specialty is organizational development. So really helping local Main Street organizations develop, but providing board training, nonprofit training in terms of how to run a nonprofit, strategic planning, a lot of different things that she does to provide. But we also have like a landscape architect, we have an architect, we have an urban planner, we have graphic design, promotional specialists. We have a number of different folks that have expertise in particular things, and they provide that TA to the local communities. But we also have, like I said, our capital outlay program that we provide. We also provide, because every local Main Street program is part of Main Street America, we pay for all of their membership fees, and we pay for their attendance, at least for their fee to attend the conference, for the registration for our national conference, which is in Philadelphia this year. We're going to be leaving in a couple of weeks to join the larger network. And then like our revitalization partners implement local projects. They focus on a lot of the local resource development, planning, working with us and the local government to really drive a lot of the work. And they're the ones that mainly request our services. We put them in the field, and we work with the local government and the local partner to really, again, drive the work. And the work is different in everywhere we work. Every community is unique, every community is different. And I think we try to work from the ground up. We as a state coordinating program, we don't try to look at the work as the state's coming in to do. We have ideas we want to help you guys work with. It's more bottom-up approach, where we kind of work with you to understand what your assets are, what your desires are, and kind of help you build that up and provide resources and technical assistance. I'm going to turn it over to Amy to just talk a little bit about the approach and kind of how that work gets done. Next page, please, as well.
Thank you, Daniel. Yes, so the way that we do our work is by using the Main Street approach, which is a trademark approach to asset-based community revitalization that was established by Main Street America in 1980. And that approach basically identifies an economic transformation strategy for every Main Street program that we work with. As Daniel said, every community is different, so the work we do in every community is different. We have some communities that might attract a lot of tourists. We have other communities that no tourists are going there. They're really focused on serving their local community, the local people who live there. We have some programs, as Daniel mentioned, who are arts and cultural districts with a very strong arts and cultural focus. And we have others who don't have that. They might have an outdoor recreation focus. So we really kind of hone in on what the unique assets are in each of our communities, and we develop these strategies that are really focused on leveraging those unique assets and then identifying projects within those 4 points that Daniel mentioned: economic vitality, design, promotion, and organization, to try to help advance those strategies forward. And I think you could switch to the next slide, please. So we start that process by ensuring that there is a vision for the community or for that district that we are working in. So if there's been some recent planning done, if there has been, let's say, a metropolitan redevelopment area plan or a master plan for that neighborhood or comprehensive plan, that's been done pretty recently, we can just pull that community vision from there. Otherwise, we might go through sort of a community process to kind of get some buy-in from the community for what they would like to see in that district that we're focused on. And we also want to have a sense of what the market opportunities are, what the constraints are, what do we already have there economically. And then we use all of that information. We look at the demographics as well. We develop those transformation strategies. We then develop that work plan that has all of those different projects and things in those 4 points that help us move those strategies forward. And we identify measurable outcomes that we can use to track our progress on those. And then hopefully we reach a level of achievement that enables us to kind of redo that process again, go back and look at that community vision, see how far we've come, what we have achieved in our work, and then reevaluate and see, okay, if we've reached a certain level of achievement in this strategy, what are our new opportunities that we want to focus on, that we want to leverage as we move forward? Next slide, please. And I'll turn it back over to you, Daniel.
Sure. So, and like I said, we don't have a Main Street program in Santa Fe, but we do have 2 project-based initiatives that we've been working with over the last few years. And, these are actually like preludes. I mean, they could be just standalone projects where because we want to work in every community we can. We are a state program. We want to provide resources to every community that is interested in working with us. So we have project-based initiatives. Like I said, it's more, instead of doing district-wide redevelopment, we're going to do one project. Right now, we're working in I think Sila Rufina Nexus neighborhood. And I know they were looking at potentially an arts and cultural district at one time, and really focused, I think our work there was on placemaking, just creating some vibrant spaces where we can get more people and interact with, I think, a lot of the cultural institutions in Sila Rufina. I know some of the work we worked with them was we helped them develop a 501c3, and again, we did some creative placemaking work. So I think I was looking at a walking assessment around Meow Wolf area and connecting it to other cultural institutions there. And then the other one we did was with Airport Road, and most of that was more around kind of larger strategic planning work. But we also looked at a potential, and I know we had talked about it last year, but was doing a metropolitan redevelopment designation report with them to get an MRA plan. But I know we had some changes in some of our staff, so it kind of fell off. But I know we have talked about reinstitute or getting that work started up again. But the strategic planning was completed, and it was part of a larger, I think, framework that they were trying to do to hit a lot of different touch points as far as supporting businesses and residents in that district. But a lot of our stuff was really focused more around the economic development component. But there are a lot of different things we can do. It could be placemaking, it could be facade improvements, it could be, property redevelopment, creative economy, which is kind of what we're doing in Sila Rufina, or even promotion around promoting districts or businesses, doing branding. A lot of different stuff we can do around that. But again, those are our first 2 projects there. Next slide, please. And so in Santa Fe, we call them our urban neighborhood commercial corridors. but we have projects in frontier rural communities, which actually we're working in Agua Fria right now as well. And the village is our partner there. And then we have Native American communities initiatives where, we're primarily working with tribal entities and their local partners. Next one, please. I'll turn it back over to Amy to talk about how to become a Main Street program. Yes.
Thank you, Daniel. So, as we mentioned, we've had two different districts or neighborhoods within Santa Fe that have been a part of our project-based initiative process. And that actually is the starting off point to become a Main Street program. So we've kind of started using that as a pathway because it really helps us start to build that capacity up and get to know the community or the district and get a sense of where they're at. So in that first year, as Daniel mentioned, we just focus on, the technical assistance around one specific project they want help with. If they're interested in, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself because this is on the next slide. So I'll just note here, you can see that it's 2 rounds of the project-based initiative before going into the accelerator program and then graduating from that to be a full-fledged Main Street program. So if you'll go to the next slide, I can catch up with myself here. So basically we work with that program, we look for it to be a community-driven process, though we certainly have some communities where the municipality has helped initiate the work and then engaged a local stakeholder group to continue driving it forward. So that first project-based initiative is just focused on one specific project that we are providing technical assistance with. We can also sometimes offer a small seed grant to help provide some funding for that project. Once that is successfully completed, the community has the option of then reapplying for a second round of the project-based initiative and letting us know that they're interested in pursuing the next step, which would be entering into the New Mexico Accelerator process. So during that second round of their designation as a project-based initiative, we work with them to develop a accelerator action plan that incorporates our accelerator process benchmarks, as well as any local priorities that they might have, into a plan that they can then begin implementing once they graduate into the New Mexico Accelerator process. If you could switch to the next slide, please. So during that accelerator process, we provide in-depth training from all of our different specialists that Daniel mentioned that we have, and we provide them with technical assistance as they work through achieving the benchmarks we've set out for them. So some of those could be, just establishing a 501c3, seating a board of directors, initiating some fundraising activities, working to establish a contract with this municipality. Those might be some of the organizational benchmarks. We also ask them to start building relationships with their business owners and identifying opportunities for providing support. We ask them to start thinking about, developing a website and starting to, develop these tools for marketing their programs. So we have a long list of benchmarks, which we'd be happy to share with you all if you'd like to see what that looks like. And then once they complete that benchmark process, the accelerator benchmark process, we then graduate them to being a Main Street program. And at that point in time, we really kind of had the expectation that they have a full-time staff person who is working for the organization. They have this fully functioning board. They have a work plan, that has projects in each of the 4 points. And then we begin working with them on establishing those economic transformation strategies that we mentioned earlier, which really kind of become the driving force behind the work that they're doing in their specific community. And I think that's kind of the basics for how you become a Main Street program. And I think that is the last slide. I think the next one is just thank you and questions.
Yeah, and I would just add that, we have different, the majority of our programs, the local programs are nonprofit organizations with a service contract, and these are full-fledged Main Street programs with a district. And those are the programs that get access to our capital outlay, because the idea is we're going to make larger investments in the infrastructure. You want to make sure there's a local program, Main Street program, that's going to build off those investments. And for us, create jobs and create additional GRT and private sector reinvestment. But we do have a couple of programs. Farmington would be one of them, that the executive director, rather than being an employee of the local nonprofit is actually an employee of the city, and I believe Lordsburg is a similar one as well. And then Zuni Pueblo, although they're kind of switching to the nonprofit model. But just saying that because my goal is always to meet communities where they're at, and I know what works in one's not necessarily going to work in another. So I'm open to different ways of looking at and adjusting the model, because I think the model is meant to be adjusted and fit the circumstances. But certainly, if there is interest in starting a program, and even though it may start, local government initiated, as Amy said, because a lot of our project-based initiatives have been starting that way. But we start developing once we know we have a commitment from the local government and an area and just some stakeholders, we can start building up that capacity as we move forward. But with that, yes, we definitely stand for questions if you have any.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and really appreciate you joining us tonight and presenting. Questions or comments from members of the committee at this time? Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it. I'm somewhat familiar with the program. Definitely know of the successes that have been had in Farmington with their downtown corridor. Regarding the local programming, whether it's the Siler Rafina Airport Road corridor, or even the Agua Fria Village, planning that's been done, where are we at with those? Are either any of those three on to round two?
So Siler Rafina was, I think we provided our work. We even touched base with them to see if that was something they were interested in becoming, a Main Street program, a larger Main Street program with the district. They weren't sure at the time. I think it was about a month and a half ago, I think we checked in. We did help them start the C3. And Airport Road actually was on the second round of a project, but things stalled a little bit. But again, I think that a lot of it had to do with us having some changes in our contractors and moving forward with that work. But we are in the second round with them, but trying to start that work around, I think, the MRA designation. And Agua Fria is still in their first round.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And so just in regards to the supports required, what is the commitments on behalf of the city? Because I did see once you get into the accelerator phase, there is a $20,000 commitment. What are
Correct.
what are the commitments for phases 1 and phase 2?
So for phase 1, at least for the initial one, it's just being a partner, right? We don't put any financial commitments on the project-based initiative. As we moved up to the accelerator, that's when I think the financial commitment from the city comes in, and it's per program. And like I said, Albuquerque has 5 programs. Well, one's actually South Valley, so they're part of the Bernalillo County. But with them, and it usually depends on the size of the community. Like downtown Albuquerque is a huge community, huge district, whereas Borellis is one of our programs that much smaller. It's just a smaller corridor. So we do have a tiered kind of a tiered level of commitment. I think the smallest one is like 25,000, but that's for our like small rural communities. I don't have the numbers with me right now, but I do have an MOU that I can share with you and I can send it to Johanna just to share with you. You guys can see what level of commitment we are looking for just based on the size of the community, right? And Amy, if you can correct me if you have it off the top of your head for a community the size of Santa Fe.
That's what I was just looking for it, and I'm just finding the old
Yes.
one. I know that the commitment for Albuquerque is the highest level is 75,000, or right around there. I'm not sure if that would be the same for Santa Fe, or if it would be the way we have it tiered is you can either base it off of like the neighborhood size. As Daniel said, Borellis is a much smaller district and area than like downtown is. So they originally were basing their funding off of it being more of a neighborhood as opposed to like this, really massive downtown. I'll keep looking. If there's another question, I'll keep looking and see if I can
But I will forward the MOU that it's a biennial MOU we do with every program every 2 years. It's an MOU between the city, the local partner, and the state Main Street program. And it actually does outline all the everything that we each are taking responsibility for, and it outlines what the commitment is financially from each community as well, based on the size. And again, that could be scaled to a neighborhood or a city if it's just one downtown. But I think with our larger cities, because we have a number of downtown areas or commercial corridors that we focus on.
Okay, thank you so much. And the
Sure.
last question I have is I'm sorry, having a brain fart, but it's for you.
Director Nelson?
Ms. Nelson. You mentioned as we were starting the presentation, getting to focus, focus on downtown area. And a lot of what Main Street does is revitalization and economic viability of areas. And many would say they don't picture that with downtown. They would say downtown Santa Fe is revitalized and its economy is thriving. And so I guess the question is, are there other areas of the city you're looking at? Because we've done a lot of work around the remike about 10 years ago. Now with the work that's going into Midtown, this could be a perfect opportunity to begin that work of looking at different area of our city that might need the support, the infrastructure, the long-term planning. Is that an option that you're looking into possibly?
Madam Chair, Counselor, thank you for this question. If you recall, when we were pitching the idea of hiring the economic development specialist, the nuance of that title of being a quote unquote downtown specialist arose in discussion, exactly to your points around, does it make sense to focus on the downtown versus other parts of the city that we know need help? And this is a perfect example that although this person is focused in downtown to provide door knocking and business services to our community immediately in the downtown area, we are really excited to build our capacity with her arrival so she can look at other parts of the city to explore where the best fit for a Main Street project could be. And so she's not beholden to the downtown community. And Daniel and Amy and their team are incredibly helpful and insightful to give us guidance around how can we get the best feedback from community to understand where the best fit for a Main Street project would be. So I hope does that answer your question around?
It does. I just would want for us to work, if this is a path the city wants to explore, do it in a manner that is going to have the best and most sustainable impact in city. And given that, as I mentioned earlier, downtown is thriving, and I don't want to bring in a program that is going to take away services potentially from another area of town. And not to say we couldn't have multiple programs like City of Albuquerque, but I think we already do somewhat have multiple with the two, the Siler Rafina Airport Road, even though that's not City of Santa Fe, it's still supporting the City of Santa Fe infrastructure. Same could be argued for Agua Fria, even though they're not in city limits. Whatever happens in Agua Fria impacts the City of Santa Fe. And so that's where I would like for us to really think of where it could be best invested in. And that's where my mind gravitated. What better than what we've been trying to really plan and kick off for 10 years with the remike, now with the Midtown redevelopment, opportunities fresh, and just want to plant that seed. So thank you, Director Nelson. I really appreciate that. Apologize for forgetting your name. Didn't have enough coffee today. No other questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions, Counselor Castro?
Just a quick comment that, yeah, I want to double down that we should continue the work on Airport Road because actually a lot of that was building economic stability for locals, not so much for tourists, and focusing on some of the food trucks and some of the places where we could do placemaking. So to your point, Councilor Garcia, I think it is super important. I think we're trying to work on it. So please, please reach out to those folks.
Thank you so much. Any other questions, comments? Yeah, I think I would echo, and when we had the first discussion around downtown, I would be in agreement of where I'm seeing a lot of need. The remake never took off, and that's always been one of those big questions as to why. Sila Rufina has always been an area that I see as a real opportunity for turning over, and Cerrillos, it's our main drag into town from the airport, extension of Airport Road, and with all of the other work that we're trying to do on cleaning up Cerrillos and a lot of the issues we've been seeing there. We already have a lot of businesses there, and we also have a lot of empty buildings, and I just have always seen that as an area where we really have not reached our full potential, and where there is so much visibility and traffic and businesses, and there's a lot happening there. So I think that as we assess where the best place to put our resources is for something like this, I have a hard time with downtown being the arena. Not to say that there's plenty to do in downtown. There's, a lot of things that we've discussed, and I think the conversations around downtown also get very I think they get really complex and important in how we make sure that downtown, preserves the culture and history of Santa Fe without turning into Disneyland. And that's something that, maybe this would be appropriate, but I do see a lot of other opportunities in the area. My one question, I think that understanding, is there anywhere that there might be like a case study, where we see Farmington or one of the others where we've seen a lot of success from, start to finish, a before and after almost, or before and now, because I imagine it is still a process. Because again, both Councilor Garcia and I mentioned Remike, and the St. Michael's corridor and link, and it never manifested. And so that's been, and we've had a couple starts here that seem to be a little stalled. And that is my concern is, we have a lot of really wonderful ideas. There's a lot of engagement. There's a lot of excitement. And then it just kind of fizzles. And then we're left with these beautiful plans that we are not seeing into fruition. And so that would be my main question. And I'm not sure if there's a case study that might really illustrate what creates success here. And I know you mentioned we try to make this a flexible, or you all try to make it a flexible program and specific to each community. But that is one of my really big concerns, especially seeing that it looks like the two in the city have seemed to petered out a little bit right now, and hopefully we can revive them.
Sure, Madam Chair, Councilor, I think that's why we started. We used to do just open applications for Main Street programs, and they would stall because I think there was a lot of front end work that had to be done building capacity before they were actually ready to engage long term in some of this work, which is why we switched to a more project based initiative where we can just start early and show some success, and that I think people could build off of it and get more people to interact and want to follow through with it, which is why we try to start small and then build up, so that one, it's things that we can physically see beyond just having a plan that we put a lot of effort into but nothing happens. And I think a big part of that is what Amy talked about, is more of an action plan versus that help you get through some of those benchmarks for being a full-fledged Main Street program. But it also includes smaller projects that are, whether you get through it or not, it's still going to improve your community in some way. but there's not the big financial commitment. It's more around building that capacity and getting things done so that we could see long-term success and set them up for that, right? And then that's when we do some of the bigger infrastructure projects. But we can certainly provide you with I think some examples, and we have done some other presentations where we kind of showed how some of our infrastructure projects kind of work hand in hand with small business development, with promoting the district and doing other things that like working on some of the facade squads and other things that kind of enhance the district beyond just the public side of it, right? Where the infrastructure, because our whole goal is to get private sector reinvestment in people into these buildings, but we certainly have some examples that I think we could share, and we can pull some together, and I can send it just for you guys as well as I think the MOU template that we have, just to give you a better idea of how the partnership works and what the financial commitments are long term once you actually become a Main Street program.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, go right ahead.
Sorry, thank you. I was just going to add as well, while I realize this is not really a comparable community, but we actually do have a Great American Main Street Award semifinalist this year. Raton, New Mexico is a finalist for the National Main Street Award, which we'll be finding out in Philadelphia if they won or not. And I realize it's a very different scale, very different community than Santa Fe, but it is a good example of many incremental and complementary things happening together, as opposed to just one major redevelopment project. It's them providing grants to business owners to improve the exteriors of their businesses while also, launching a boot camp to help fill vacant buildings, while also working with New Mexico Main Street and their city to physically improve the streetscape infrastructure, to create more confidence in the business community to want to invest and open new businesses in the district. So, they have seen a lot of progress, and there's still more work to do there, but they have some really great examples of incrementally implementing the Main Street work to achieve some significant results.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, and I'd love to definitely see these examples. And I'm sorry, remind me, are you guys coming to Economic Development Advisory Committee? Are they presenting at EDAC? Yes. So I will see you there. I also chair that committee, so if you can incorporate some of those for that presentation, I know I would appreciate it, and the EDAC committee members would as well. Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Looking forward to continuing this conversation with you all and with you, Director Nelson. And thank you so much for being here.
Great. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
All right, let's keep rolling. Moving on to our next presentation. We have update on homelessness. This is a reschedule for the, what were you calling it, Director Hammond-Paul? The wind event that wasn't. So we have Director Hammond-Paul, Community Health and Safety Director here. I am not seeing either Julie Sanchez or Kristen Wood. So are you flying solo today?
Flying solo.
All right. I will turn it over to you then. Thank you so much.
I think this will take just a second. If we can pull up the HDMI connection from the podium. What is it? Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Madam Chair, Councilors, great to be back in front of you all. I understand we have a 6:30-ish.
We have a 6:30 goal. Let's put it that way.
Plenty of time for questions. I recognize that this presentation might seem a little out of order given a lot of the conversations we've had recently. But the real purpose of this presentation is to kind of orient us all to the broader plan that my team is working off of as we move forward with our work in the city. So it's kind of, we've seen a lot of the details already, and this is the big picture zoom out. So I want to first start by saying that this is a plan that really focuses on the immediate, and you'll see what this plan is not in the next couple slides. But we're really looking about the acute challenges of homelessness in the city, and how do we alleviate some of that pressure? While many of the responsibilities in this plan are specific to city staff and agencies, this is really a whole of city endeavor where we hope to have service providers, community organizations, business, residents, state, federal partners all coming together to help us leveraging those shared resources. So what this plan is not, I understand this is a little bit of a strange thing to say, but this plan is not an answer to sustainable housing stock challenges in the city, nor is it the long-term plan to solve homelessness in Santa Fe. By saying it's not those, I'm not diminishing the importance of those two critical areas for us to fill in. But this is really about a set of focused actions to address immediate challenges in our city. So there are those affordable housing stock issues, as well as long-term strategy issues. Planning is deeply necessary, but you're not going to see a lot of that in this document. And I can answer questions about our longer term planning if you'd like as well. So there are some kind of conditions that we hope to have to make this plan succeed. Funding, which I'll speak to on each slide, partnership, community support, political will, and something that's very important that I'm trying to work on and cultivate in my team, which is operational excellence. So we've broken the areas of action into sets of objectives that speak to 6 distinct areas: safety, security, and stability. So we want to improve safety and security for residents, businesses, neighborhoods, as well as unhoused individuals. We want to expand our non-congregate shelter options. So people in the city are very familiar with the congregate shelters that exist here, but the nation and best practices have been moving towards non-congregate options as really the future and delivering better results. We need to improve outreach and navigation services, which is something that we've spoken about that I'll dive a little deeper into. Bolster day services. This one is key because I think a lot of the sentiment in the community that is experiencing, or the part of the community that feels homelessness and the impacts of homelessness on the streets has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of folks just don't have a place to be during the day. So in some ways it's, if folks are on the street, and the easiest solution to that is give them a place to be that they can be. So bolstering day services will do that. In terms of the way we work together to improve efficiency, the provider community, the city community, government stakeholders, it really relies on coordination. So enhancing collaboration across city departments internally, but also with community providers is another objective area. And then there's some data policy and advocacy work as well that's detailed. So I'm going to jump into the specific actions in the plan that we're working on. You will see little stacks of cash, and those represent things that have been funded currently. Many thanks to you all, and both one-time appropriations as well as continued support for various city departments. So when it comes to safety, security, and stability, I think our team is really wanting to emphasize this as recognizing the challenges that residents, businesses, and neighborhoods feel as kind of spillover effects of unsheltered homelessness. So there's a bunch of different ways that we hope to make measurable change here. One is improving security at shelter sites. We have encouraged and asked all shelters in the community to improve their security operations. Pete's Place, for instance, has hired a full-time security staff. While that hasn't necessarily resulted in a felt difference on the outside of the facility, which we are continuing to work on. We have seen a decrease in calls for service for inside the facility. So that means that conditions on the inside of the facility are improving. Additionally, all newly sponsored city facilities and sites will have 24/7 security on them. Another one that, thanks to the one-time funding, we are working to implement now with our, I think Partners in Crime is the wrong word for it, but our collaborators in the Office of Economic Development.
Partners Against Crime, maybe?
Partners Against Crime is supporting small businesses through the fund, the Windows to Opportunity Fund that we're working to create. And again, that has been funded and we're working to bring that to bear. And then this is another one that we had discussed recently, which is funding and deploying community-based public safety teams. These teams, there's an RFP that closes on Monday, March 24th for these services. And we're hoping to award that contract with very quickly and get boots on the ground in weeks, not months, but bearing the feasibility of that, obviously. So moving on to expanding non-congregate shelter. This is again a topic that we have discussed a lot in this room. So one of the things that we've been working with is working diligently with community partners to improve programs for the congregate sites. I will be the first to admit that we have a lot of work to do here still, but we are actively engaging with our community providers to try and improve shelter conditions, whether it's through improvement plans, or working with third-party consultants who will help improve and create plans for improvement there. 2.2, we have a nice dollar sign there because we have funded the expansion of the micro communities, and our goal that we are working towards is to establish at least 2 new temporary micro communities with 50 units between the 2 of them, not per. So that is work that is fitting into this plan as well. And then also master lease negotiations. I'm not sure if the Quality of Life Committee or the governing body more broadly has been made aware of this, but we have a block of 25 motel rooms where we have moved folks from congregate shelters into motel rooms to help stabilize these individuals and move them towards more permanent housing. And that program has been running since early February. Okay. Improving outreach and navigation services. So this 3.1 is combined with the street outreach teams. So those teams will both be doing community-based public safety as well as providing outreach services. We've also been working with the LifeLink, who has recently established and deployed a 5-person outreach team who is going to encampments, identifying individuals and helping move them into the shelter system or other areas for support. We are, another aspect of this work is conducting community outreach sessions. This is not an item that we necessarily fund through this work, but something that my team and in partnership with you all, we hope to do both for specifically the establishment of the micro communities, but also more broadly engaging the community around this challenging issue and learning from the community, as well as hoping to share information that we have with regard to best practices and other models. Every chance that I have to speak to the incredible work that my colleagues do in other departments, I want to amplify their work. So we have a lot of city managed services that contribute to these goals, including but not limited to the ARU and the park rangers. Both of those programs, while not under my team's remit, provide incredible services that contribute to the goals that we all are working towards. And anything we can do as a city to support those functions, I think brings us closer to achieving measurable difference in the community. Bolstering day services, I spoke a little towards this at the beginning. We have since piloted so this was last updated in December. We have been working with the Salvation Army to pilot a day services model. They're currently open 3 days a week, and we're hoping to expand that to 7 days a week. In the long run, we hope to establish a full-time 24/7 one-stop shop, so to speak, that provide day services and centralized services for the city. Lastly, something we are working on right now is deploying storage solutions where we can help folks not have to bring their belongings with them everywhere they go, but instead have a safe place that is monitored and controlled to allow people to store belongings. So again, it's not bringing their personal belongings with them everywhere. And I think if I can just digress for a moment, this is a really important, but seemingly it maybe seems insignificant, but I think there's some really important aspects to little things like this, in that without being able to have your belongings stored safely, it creates a disincentive for individuals to go to a doctor's appointment or seek counseling because they'd have to leave their belongings in a place that might not be secured. So our hope is that by having solutions where folks can leave things, it actually encourages folks to begin entering processes of and systems of care. Coordination, not the most glamorous topic, but an incredibly important one. It really is the cornerstone of a lot of the success we need to do, because again, while a lot of this work and the accountability of this work falls on my team, it is really an all hands on deck effort across the city, but as well as with community partners. Internal to the city, I've had the honor to continue the work of the Cerrillos Road Emergency Management Team. So every other week, senior leaders from across different departments in the city convene, and we work to address specific issues and kind of tick items off of this plan. Additionally, I am working with various other stakeholders in the community. So this is 5.2 to help clarify who's doing what and how we can coordinate better. There's a lot of community actors in this space, whether it's the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness or the Civic Housing Authority or the various shelter providers. We need to all understand ourselves as part of a collective system, not individual organizations doing specific things, but rather how we're all contributing. So there are some specific mechanisms that we're putting in place to strengthen that collaboration, including standing meetings and really defining roles. I'm hoping we are nearing the end of the Code Blue season, but we also received some one-time funding for this and really kind of strengthening the coordination aspect of the Code Blue response in the city. We've done that in a couple ways, and we'll continue to do that. One is by deploying pop-up shelters. We had a number of them throughout the season this year so far, as well as making sure that we are facilitating conversations not only within the city, which had been previously the MO, but also making sure that other stakeholders like the hospital, the county, and other folks are engaged in our coordinated effort for outreach during Code Blue. Kind of a piece of that is understanding the role that the faith community plays and has played in this work. They have been pretty instrumental in the past into a lot of the work that has happened here, and we are working to re-engage them in this critical work and understand them as assets in our community that can really bolster this. To to that note, they were one of the number of organizations or specific churches, synagogues, and other places of faith were instrumental during the Code Blue response in offering their spaces for pop-up shelters. And then also a big thing on my front and something that I personally am very passionate about is using data to promote transparency, but also using it to make sure that what we're doing is creating results that we can measure and see tangibly. So we have a funded position now to hire a data analyst for this purposes, as well as looking to deploy some dashboards and public-facing tools that will allow the public to understand the work that we're doing. And then lastly, there's a host of policy and advocacy work. Some of it will include some new city legislation that is not something that we have taken a lot of, invested a lot of effort in the last 6 months, but I think there's probably plenty of things that we can bring to you all in terms of legislation and work with Marcy's team to see how we can use those levers to help advance these goals. And then also similar to that, working towards a standalone Office of Housing and Homelessness Services to centralize and streamline the work that we do and make sure that it is staffed, funded, and responsible accordingly. So that is the end of the presentation, and I'll be happy to stand for questions.
Well, thank you so much, Director Hammond. Paul, really appreciate it. As both Councilor Chavez and Councilor Faulkner are the ones with hard stops, I will give both of you the opportunity to take the floor first for any questions, if either of you are interested at this time. Councilor Chavez? Mr. Faulkner? Either way, go ahead, Councilor Faulkner.
One of the concerns I have is as we try to manage this population, the crime element around the population, not that the population is committing crimes, but there's an element of crime that consistently exists around this population. It's going to move throughout the city. And so do we have a plan in place for how we can manage the crime element that kind of follows this population?
Madam Chair, councilors, I think that's a great question, a complex one, and one that I would also like to bring in Chief Joy to speak to. But from my perspective, I think what we have presented in this plan brings forward addressing unsheltered homelessness on the streets, allows us to then see and focus on crime more specifically. So right now it's all mixed. It's hard to pull which threads apart because there are a number that I've pointed to a couple of times when I've presented to you all is we have 280 shelter beds in the city, but about 400 individuals that we know of that are homeless. So about 100, lack of 100 beds. It's hard to disentangle the people on the streets from the people preying on the people on the streets. So providing safe, dignified, and 24/7 shelter and services hopefully allows people to be in safer locations so they're not victims of crime. But surely, continued support from the police department and increased efforts from both the city police as well as other law enforcement support in the city, in the state writ large are crucial elements of that.
Like there's rightfully so, the public perceives the homeless population as being where crime is coming from. That may be true for a portion of the homeless population, but I do think the way you just described it, as in there's predators who are looking to this population as an access point crime. And so I'm always concerned when we start moving things around, like where is the crime element going to go in the city? Like if we, with the pellet shelters, for example, decentralizing the population is a good idea. But then there's gonna, somewhere in the city, there's gonna be another place where the crime element has found a way to like get into that population. And so I just want to make sure that when we're considering all this, we're also considering how to manage the crime population. The part of it that becomes criminal.
Madam Chair, Counselor, yep, thank you for the question and comment. And I also think 100% in agreement and understanding of your comment. I'd also say that, for instance, when it comes to drugs, for instance, there's two pieces of that. There's the user and the seller. By some of the work that we put forward in this plan, moving towards helping people get treatment and recovery, we can hopefully cut down on demand. That doesn't address the fact that there are drug dealers that need to be approached through a law enforcement angle as opposed to a treatment angle. So hopefully some of this alleviates or pulls back on some of the demand, so then we can focus on the supply side.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Chavez?
You. Okay, I think I have more comments than questions. First is, I'm a true believer in the fact that a lot of the issues we are facing is because we have a broken behavioral health system. Those who are experiencing homelessness and want to live that lifestyle, because it is a lifestyle that some of them choose to live, but there are those that need help. I'm not necessarily hopeful in the fact that New Mexico is in a place to address that level of help that some of them need. So that's my first comment. So I think we keep continuing to have a conversation around homelessness and how to get them housed, but it doesn't fix a problem, because unless we fix the root cause of why they're where they're at, then they're going to continue to need assistance in getting housed. And that is, a lot of that's beyond us. A lot of that has to do with just how New Mexico has a broken health system. Some of it has to do with a lot of us really advocating for helping our nonprofits get aligned so that resources aren't being duplicated, but we're actually able to expand the usage of those resources. So there's a lot of work we can do, but there's a lot that's out of our hands. But I just want to really focus on the fact that we're having a conversation that is without a very important piece that is going to help what we're doing be successful or not. So that's my first comment. The second comment is I will be requesting some data eventually, because I want to see how many individuals are seeking our resources around housing repeatedly, because we have that. We have a lot of individuals that are just seeking resources repeatedly in different areas, whether it's through our nonprofits, whether it's through the city. But that's telling evidence, because if we're having to give individuals the same resource over and over again, that means that we're not having impact on the problem. And so we have to put our heads together to figure out how to better do that. So I just wanted to shine light on that. I appreciate your efforts. I appreciate everything you're doing. I think that this is a huge problem to tackle, but it's very important for us to realize that there's a root cause involved with this problem, and we're short in those services, like very short in those services, like warm handoffs are absolutely necessary for addicts and for people experiencing alcoholism. Do we have those resources? We do not. They do not exist. We are shorthanded and they don't exist. So individuals get lost through that process. And so I just think it's important, and I would love, and I will be, I already reached out to you. I have a new role for the state. I'm looking at trauma, but I also just want to have a conversation with you on the bigger picture and how we could change the dialogue a little bit to focus on how to address the issues that are preventing us from actually solving the problem on a bigger scale. Because I feel like we're kind of forced in a place right now where we can't. So those are just my comments. If you want to respond to anything, that's fine, but just my comments.
Madam Chair, Counselor, thank you for the comments. And I think you say it incredibly well. And this is why at the front of the presentation, I say what this presentation is not, because there are some like what I would call macro level challenges that if we can help get our hands around, that puts us in an incredible place. Things like that we see nationally and about affordable housing shortages. These are the structural things that unless we address, we're never going to get out of this. Mental and behavioral health shortages, and then drug supply. You know, those we can work diligently at a city level to address some of those, especially affordable housing. That's something we should be able to solve. But we also will need to work with state partners and federal partners when it comes to the flow of fentanyl into the state and into our communities. So I want to condition us to this big picture of we can do a lot here and we can do a lot well here. But we also are feeling the impacts of some larger trends.
Absolutely. And I just want to, point some of the focus on youth trauma. Youth trauma is why we're here. Youth trauma defines our future as a state, and we're not addressing it as a state. We don't have the capacity, organization, the list goes on, to address youth trauma. But as long as we don't treat trauma within our youth, we're just really fostering a future that is repetitive of the issues we're facing right now. And I think that's something we often don't talk about either. Poverty and being exposed to drug abuse and being exposed to parents who are incarcerated and being exposed to divorce and being exposed to all those risk factors lead you to those individuals that need resources outside of what you can provide for yourself. And so that is something I don't hear enough of. That is something I'm focused on in my other role, and I want to collaborate with you all. But I feel like if we want to be preventative as a city, that's something that we have to put more emphasis on, because it's truly the only preventative factor is how do we reverse the risk factors that come with trauma, which we're very high in. We're the, amongst the worst states to raise a child. There's a reason for that. And so in our little city here, how are we reversing those risk factors? So I think it actually starts there, right? Behavioral health is an issue. All of the other things that you discuss are an issue, but what's the absolute root cause? It's what's putting people on the path to be where they're at right now. And that starts with youth. And so I would love to continue that conversation. I just wanted to emphasize it because I'm very passionate about it. I also feel like if there's any way for us to create a future in Santa Fe where these issues are reduced, the only way we're going to be able to do that is to actually focus on youth trauma. So with that, I yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Castro.
Thank you so much, Director, for the presentation. I do have similar questions, and I think that talking about the pallet shelters and some of the data is really important. I know that Councilor Garcia and I were a little bit concerned that some of the data we got was coming directly from Pallet. How can we trust some of the information that's coming from the company that we're buying the pallet shelters from?
Madam Chair, councilors, that's a great question, and I think there are a couple ways I can answer it that I'll attempt to do. I also will be very happy to hear any suggestions that you have on that front. One, they are a B Corp, and I think as a company, they have aligned their business model with tangible environmental, social, and economic benefits that they want to see distributed to the community. So I think that in and of itself as a certification for the type of business that they're running, that is a national and international standard.
We might want to explain just for the public what a B Corp is. And I don't know if maybe
Yeah,
Director
and
Nielsen
this
might.
is not in my wheelhouse. And I also want to say I'm not like endorsing or well, I am endorsing the product because we're using it, but I'm not defending them as a company by any means, nor would I attempt to speak on their behalf. Um, but I think, the reason why we're using their data is because we went through a competitive bid process where they were evaluated as a vendor, and for the quality of services they deliver, they have a unique product that can speak to the quality of the way it has been implemented in, I believe, 126 cities across the country.
Perfect. So it's sort of a combination of general data and also anecdotal data of what they've seen in the communities where they're working. Perfect. I sort of brought this up because crime was one of the big issues that was brought up today. The data says that crime around certain specific shelters has gone down. And I think that we are really treading a line here that is delicate in saying that folks who are unhoused are at higher risk of substance abuse issues or mental illness. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I do hear that we have poverty, we have trauma, we have recidivism, we have broken systems, and I'll push back. I think a lot of systems work the way they're supposed to. They're just not made for us. It's important that we think about what some of these populations are facing as individuals. I was having a conversation about what a veteran's site might look like. Sometimes that is having to be ADA compliant. Sometimes that is an elderly population. Can you speak a little bit to some of the overlap of the populations and how we can maybe split out some of these specific needs?
So, Madam Chair, Councilors, I'm not 100% sure. Could you restate the question?
Sure. I'm trying to understand how many layers are in these populations. Let's look at veterans as an example, though that's not the only example.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I understand it better now. So the short answer is populations are complex, right? Nobody's a like we're all individuals that have layers. You can be a veteran. You can also be an addict. You can also be disabled. I'm not pretending like we're going to be able to have a site that is only serving one specific type of we're trying to find large common denominators that make sense to group people as veterans. Makes a lot of sense, and there's a lot of precedent for that nationally, and also locally. We have the Veterans Integration Center in Albuquerque, which has veteran-specific housing, as well as for veterans and their families. Families is another unit that makes sense. By and large, parents taking care of their children and working to take care of their children makes sense to be with other parents in the same place and other families in the same place. Sober individuals is another category that to our team makes sense. These aren't perfect categories. There's many people who will disagree with these types of categories, but to the best of our ability, we're working to find these large common denominators that we can think that this is a viable way for a temporary community to be functioned or to be situated. Youth is another group. When we can match as much to our ability like with like, it allows us to have more targeted services and better services for those individuals. So maybe with veterans, having wraparound services at a site that includes PTSD or navigation that orients those individuals specifically to benefits that are available to them as veterans makes sense. Similar with youth programming. So that's the logic that we've used. Nothing's perfect, but it's our attempt at trying to, again, group these populations into the most like and like.
I'm sure folks have many questions, and this is not the last conversation we will have about this topic. But if you could, just as my final point, address what a temporary community is and why we call it a temporary community. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Councilors, thank you for the question. And I spoke a little bit to this at a previous meeting when we talk about these the micro communities as temporary. They are a stopgap measure that enable us to address a challenge that we're facing, which is unsheltered homelessness. So folks living in arroyos, sleeping in tents, not having a place to sleep at night. It is not the long-term solution that we need of brick and mortar facilities and homes and places with permanent supportive housing, but it gets us almost to a place where we can, or it enables us to relieve the symptoms that we're feeling right now without needing the 10-year runway or the 5-year runway to build these larger investments. So that's one aspect of what it means to be temporary. The other thing is that we see these as a stepping stone to these better and more holistic investments. There's an investment that we make by putting money into the land to put in spine infrastructure on many of the plots that allows them to be then developed into a variety of different, whether it's commercial or residential uses. So it increases the value of that land by adding spine infrastructure, septic, water, electrical. So we do this investment that is a long-term investment for a temporary asset to then increase the value for that plot of land. And I'm very happy being on the record saying we do not. If these things are in communities for more than 3 years, we've done a bad job, because they should be a stopgap that enable us to get to the next better option.
Thank you so much, Director. I see the floor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Garcia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Director Hammond Paul, for the presentation. In the plan, you had mentioned support expansion of ARU and park rangers, 100% behind that. And the city manager there, I hope that is in the upcoming budget. We need it desperately. I think we've got 3 park rangers on staff right now who are, their primary task is working to address encampments. And when governing body established the park ranger program, that was not foreseen tasks given to them. That's what they've been delegated to do as of recently, and their time is spent majority of the time cleaning up or working to address encampments. And so we need more than 3. And I think full staff capacity would be 7. We've got over 80 parks. If we break into, do you include trails, et cetera, over 100. 3, not even 7 people could address that. So we need more folks. You spoke about 3.1, which was deploy trauma-informed outreach teams. And this is primarily for the Cerrillos Road corridor in downtown. Apologize, but I'm going to hit you with the hardest question first. What is the plans for Pete's Place? Because we're planning to deploy a lot of these teams on the corridor where Pete's Place Interfaith Shelter currently resides. The shelter is on a month-to-month lease. The city back in 2020 signed a multi-year lease, and during that conversation, I even remember clearly there was an amendment proposed where it should only be 2 years, where then we began to revisit and explore what the options are. Where are we at with the process? What is any initial planning for potential additional congregate shelter site locations, potentials to relocate Pete's congregate shelter? And then lastly, how is the city council going to be involved in this process? Because that was ultimately the concerns a couple of years ago when we signed this contract, and we're now in this month-to-month lease predicament. And I want to ensure that we're working towards a solution for that challenge that we're in regards to the month-to-month lease that we're in. And that way we can start thinking long-term planning. So there was kind of three questions there. Where are we at with any negotiations? Any additional congregate shelter sites? 3, how is the council going to be involved in any lease negotiation plan?
Madam Chair, councilors, thank you for the question. So let me first start by saying that at this time, the city, my department does not believe the city should be investing in congregate shelter options. We don't believe that that model is what we would call fit for purpose anymore. There are better options out there to help address these situations and allow people to both individuals who are experiencing homelessness to get on the path towards stability and autonomy maybe, but also there are better models out there for making sure that communities are safe and that we don't see a lot of the kind of spillover effect of congregate shelters. So that is why we are investing heavily in the micro community model. As I mentioned, I believe at the last city council here, or the governing body meeting last week, the police chief and the fire chief, they didn't know the exact location of the Arroyo Chimizo micro community or the Christ Lutheran site because it's such a non-issue in that community. That to me is where we want to get in terms of how these things fit into communities and into areas across the city.
Director, can I stop you there just because I do want to put into context comparing apples to apples, or to oranges, and we got to remember that there are 9 to 10 folks housed at the Interfaith Pellet Shelter site. At any given day, there are how many beds at Pete's? I think it's near 100, and
Well,
so 10 times the amount of individuals. I just don't want us to get into those comparisons. It could be a very tricky path.
Absolutely. And so Pete's on a given night flexes between 68 to 75 guests. They have capacity to get up to 120. Maybe a more apt comparison is the non-congregate shelter at Consuelo's Place, which has 64 guests. It is virtually unfelt in the city because for a lot of different reasons. One is the clientele that they serve, but also because of the model that it is, which is non-congregate and giving people their own space, allowing them to be in their own space 24/7. It's just and so those numbers are maybe a little more aligned, 64 and the 75 or so that are at Pete's. And so models like that are ones that we want to see providers moving towards in the city. Emergency shelters, congregate shelters should be a last resort for things like natural disasters or cold weather events. So that's ultimately the role that I see those types of facilities playing, as if they need to be there, it is temporary and a pop-up environment. That said, I do want to say Pizza's playing a very important role in our city right now, and it's one that we want to take pressure off them by expanding that bed number elsewhere, because without Pete's right now, that's an additional 75 folks sleeping on the street in Arroyos and across the city. So while we want to move towards non-congregate shelters, and I think this maybe gets to your second question about the current negotiations and discussion, We want to make sure that that is an asset that the city has writ large until we have the ability to properly put at least 75 additional individuals into other locations. So that is maybe a short version. In the long version, we have been working with leadership at Pete's as well as their board to work on shelter improvements, things like encouraging and supporting them in trying to add privacy screening, allowing patrons and people to be inside the fences, which they have been working to accommodate, and we're encouraging them to do as well, so that there aren't as many folks on Harrison Road and on the street. Hiring a security guard. So we've been working with them on an improvement plan, but there is obviously important improvements to be made there. Yeah.
So I guess the question around congregate shelter investment, you're not recommending we move forward with a really deep investment in that. Regarding the negotiation for the lease for Pete's Place, didn't really get a clarification. Where are we at with that? Because we've got to remember at the end of the day, it's a tenant-landlord relationship. They're providing a service to the community, but the city of Santa Fe is ultimately the landlord. And I want the city to be a good landlord. And to do that, we must ensure that the work and activity being conducted meets the standards that would be acceptable for any landlord-tenant relationship. And so with that being said, the way I look at it is, this is not going to be the fault of the current leasee, but I look at it in the sense of, would this location qualify for a nuisance property if it were a privately owned property? And that's a fair question to ask. I know you don't have the answer to that. It's a question I'd like for us as a city to reflect on. Since you may or may not be familiar with the process, the city has a nuisance abatement process where private property owners, if they become deemed too problematic for the community around them, the city can intervene and take appropriate steps. That involves, looking at maybe how many times police were responded, the impact on neighboring residents, et cetera. And it's ultimately the property owner that's responsible. And so the question is, if a resident would be calling to file nuisance complaints against the property owner, in this case would be the city of Santa Fe, would we begin to investigate ourselves? And I think that, and again, this is not a direct question for you, Director Hammond Paul. I think it's a question we as the city and the city manager, we need to take very seriously, because we've taken action on properties. We've demolished properties because they've become too much of a nuisance. And we want to ensure that the city of Santa Fe is working to provide critical services, but we also want to work to ensure that we're being good neighbors, being good landlords, and providing safe community standards. And so I think that's where, as we move towards those next steps in regards to, I guess that third question I have is, how can the council be involved? I want to make sure that we're working to have a productive relationship with the shelter and allow for them to appropriately plan as well. Because we're on month to month, I mean, we can essentially say, okay, this is it, last month for y'all. Is that appropriate? I don't think so, given the critical services being provided. But I think we need to develop an appropriate strategy that works for everybody. That includes the city, interfaith community, as well as the residents. So just plug in that there, Director Hammond Paul.
And maybe if I could
Sure.
speak to that. So as it currently stands, they are month to month. and we are not negotiating a new lease with them. So that I hope that is clear. So it is month to month until we decide as a city what the next step is. And I think that maybe leads to the next question about what the next step is. I will say, from my perspective, they are providing a critical service in the city. It is also one that is has spillover effects in the community. And but I think the question of not them, like there needs to be alternatives, and that's what our team has been working towards. I would say as a private organization, we don't have say we don't have say in terms of where they would go next, and the city is not currently working with them to find an additional location. And then lastly, I would say that in terms of how the council is involved, and I could be, so I don't have question. I don't know enough about the nuisance aspect to comment on that, but I would say I believe it's fully within the remit and ability of the council to vote on lease renewals and negotiations. So I think that is an area that you all have been involved in the past.
Thank you, Director Hammond. Paul. Item 5.1 talks about Cirrus Road Emergency Management Team and its internal city stakeholders, I guess. Is PD involved in that?
Yes, Councilor.
Okay. Since I'm not a part of these meetings, and are you a part of the meetings?
Which
This stakeholder, this Cirrus Road Emergency Management Team.
That's correct.
Okay, so one thing what would really, I would strongly recommend is enforcement. A resident should not have to travel down Cirrus Road and see people openly using drugs. You see people fighting. That's, in any other situation, people would be, there would be arrests, citations, etc. If somebody was openly using right in front of City Hall, I seriously doubt that there would be no action taken to intervene and hold that person accountable for what is unlawful actions. Those same actions should be taken just as seriously anywhere else in this community, whether it's the Cirrus Road corridor, whether it's one of the parks, or whether it's even, one of the alleyways downtown here, Santa Fe. And so what actions, what plans are being taken in this emergency management team to ensure that there is enforcement taking place?
Madam,
I will interrupt and Director Hammond, Paul, if there is a question that is better answered by a different member of staff like Chief Joy, I'd rather you not use conjecture to think of what he might say, but rather we can take note of those because obviously that is not within your purview. That is within the police department. So if you do have relevant information from your department, absolutely. If not, city manager is here and we can discuss that with the appropriate staff member. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was, is it even a conversation? Is this a topic during these emergency management teams? And if it is, what is the conversations being held on that topic?
Madam Chair, Councilor, I think I would defer definitely to Chief Joy on the specifics of how enforcement is carried out. It is, of course, a major topic. Things that we do discuss in this meeting include things like having police and public works staff help clear areas and do calls for service and other items like that. But I think the specifics of how and why officers choose to or work to prosecute or cite individuals is better under the purview of Chief Joy.
Has enforcement come up as a topic during these meetings?
Absolutely.
If you're not comfortable talking about that. I definitely understand, but enforcement is not happening. You can go down Ceres Road right now and see violations. And residents, especially young children, should not be exposed to that, and it should not be allowed. And I think this is better, I guess, better suited for Chief Joy. It's just very saddening, disappointing, and extremely frustrating, especially as a parent when children are exposed to that. It's Councillor Chavez mentioned exposure leads to acceptance, and we do not want to allow for acceptance of such activity. Last question, and you said it up front with the presentation. This is not a long-term plan. What is the long-term plan?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, it's a great question. I think there's a combination of answers to that. One involves strategic discussions with groups like the Office of Affordable Housing, permitting and land use when it comes to how we think about zoning and the ability for us to build more housing units in the city. And in terms of the long-term plan, my team is working to put forward what we see as a vision, but it is a whole of city discussion about what the priorities are from both the electeds as well as the community about how we want to work towards and what we want to work towards. So I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but what I am tasked to do with this plan and what I was presenting on is how do we address some of the immediate challenges that are facing our community that are very felt and acute.
Okay, thank you, Director Hammond, Paul. And I appreciate all the time, energy, the effort that went into this. And a lot of the proposals here are going to require resources. So again, I'm just plugging away. It's budget time. Hopefully these requests are coming forth in the budget, because we can't get this work accomplished if the money's not there. We can't allocate the money if you and your team don't ask for resources. So thank you again for this. It's hard work. Continue on. I appreciate all the time, energy, effort that you and your team put into this. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. I just have a few questions. I will try to be quick, as I know the hour is late. First, more a comment that I think is really important of some of the conversations we've had today. And I think that it actually is a really important conversation that we're going to need to have with ourselves as an organization. Is what are we capable of and what is out of our control? And this is a really hard conversation because there are some things that we can do, of course, but to Councilor Chavez's point earlier about the root causes, a lot of these are issues that are unfortunately bigger than us. And the reason that I want us to have a very clear view of that is not to wash our hands of it. But rather, I think that, as you mentioned, Director Hammond, Paul, how we work with our nonprofits and then how we work with other levels of government or other, on board levels of government, like the county, and the state and the federal government. I think that that's going to be crucial for us to understand, both where we need to really cultivate those relationships, really be lobbying our, either Santa Fe delegation when it comes to the state, or our New Mexico delegation when it comes to the federal government, our colleagues over at the county, what, falls within the jurisdiction of the district attorneys, what, all of these different areas. And I know this is something you and I have had a conversation about, of really understanding what this looks like. And it is a web. There are areas we're going to be able to leverage. But unfortunately, for a lot of these things, There are investments we can make long-term, and we actually do see that a lot with, economic development, with community services, what Councilor Chavez was speaking of with youth trauma and providing those opportunities. We do a lot of that work. But to your point, some of what we're going to be doing is staunching the bleeding. And then that's, I think it's an interesting reality. It's an unfortunate reality that we're going to need to face. And again, this is not saying that with these issues, we're like, oh, well, we can't do anything. I think really having a clear understanding of what we are capable of doing and then doing those things very well is going to be important, because we have to understand what is within our power and what's not. And if it's something that's not within our power, we have other mechanisms by which to impact it. But I would hate to see us try to do everything and do it mediocre, instead of trying to do what we really can do very well, while then really working with our partners who do have areas of influence in other ways to make sure that they're doing what they need to do very well. And I know that's not nearly as simple as I just stated it. It's going to be complex, but I think that will be something that I will be interested in hearing more about as we continue to move forward with this. With the public safety issue, I know I hear a lot from police that, they're like, we are arresting people. We are enforcing as much as possible. They're out within, 72, 48 hours. And so seeing this rotation has been really frustrating. And that is not our laws that are making that challenge. So the reason I really want to have a good understanding of that is because I want to make sure that we are doing what we can. We are pulling all our levels as hard as we can, and we have a really good understanding of those. So when we are looking at those long-term plans and strategies, when we're looking at this, that is something I want us to be mindful of and also communicative of, because our community members have other representatives that they need to be calling, that they need to be expressing these issues to, because we will do as much as we possibly can, and we need help, to be quite frank. So you mentioned one of the goals, improve shelter conditions in congregate shelters. We've had a lot of conversations around best practices. I know non-congregate shelters, we have really seen a difference in both the impact for residents of non-congregate shelters as well as the housed residents in our community. What best practices are we looking at for congregate shelters that are not currently being implemented in the congregate shelters in the city, or that we would like to see if there happened to be a new congregate shelter that was stood up? And do we, to your point, we don't run PEDS, we lease to them. How much power do we have to actually implement those?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I think we definitely have some power to encourage and expect changes at facilities that the city funds and supports. In terms of best practices, and those mechanisms are ones that I am working on with my team to push on and levy. In terms of best practices for congregate shelters, it is really a relic, I think, of previous times, and we really need to move towards other models. I think if we do continue to have congregate shelter options in the city, as I mentioned earlier, I would want them to be not constant features, but as needed features that pop up during acute moments of need. So understanding that in the same kind of capability that we exercise with emergency management during an acute incident like a long-term power shutoff or a fire, where we would stand up shelter beds for an emergency, that's when we would that's the model we should have for congregate shelters. The way we get there is by having enough options that meet the need, that satisfy the demand in the community that aren't congregate shelters. So making sure that 280 beds in the city that we have available is at a sufficient number where every bed can be, or not every bed can be filled. We want to have some extras. That's just good practice, but we'd want that number to be one that can meet the need without having congregate shelter in the city.
Okay, thank you. And I do appreciate that because I think that is an important part of the conversations around Pete's and interfaith. And I know I get a lot from my constituency about what that future is. I do think that it behooves us to learn the lesson of our neighbors to the north in Espanola. And they shut down their sanctioned encampment without another plan in place. And I know some business owners who all of a sudden, as soon as that happened, they had an influx of people, potentially seeing some break-ins, sleeping on their stoops, so we did, and so I really do appreciate the focus on that goal because I do agree with you that, and I say this frequently about interfaith, that it's not that interfaith failed. The world changed drastically. And we do need to keep up with that and the congregate model. I've not seen it be as successful as some of the other models that we have seen. Another issue I see with the congregate model, and I do believe that all of our non-congregate options currently do this, and I'm not sure any of our congregate models do this, but you've mentioned people not having somewhere to go during the day. And I do appreciate the idea of a day services space. However, I really appreciate the idea that people have a location that they get to stay at as we all get to do, leaving our homes or coming to them as we please. So I know that there has been some conversation around any new facilities needing to have 24/7 access for their residents. Is that still something that we are pursuing?
Sure. Does this work? Yeah. 100%. For any of the micro communities, which are going to be city supported and funded, we are requiring 24/7 on-site staff, availability for, these are where people can lock their own doors and store their belongings. So both having 24/7 staff as well as security on site. And I'll quickly, if I can just ad lib for a second, which is with regard to funding, I do want to say that this city, we've been very fortunate in the one-time allocations. I don't want to, given the opportunity, I'll always ask for more money, but I do want to acknowledge the fact that the city has already contributed, especially in the past couple of months, considerable funding to this work that is enabling my team to move forward with a lot of things. So I want to acknowledge that and make the commitment that we are going to use those funds well and understanding that we need to deliver results for the community.
Well, I do appreciate that. And I know that is, as people were discussing with, was it data for this conversation or data for the previous? But that is, it was Councilor Chavez again asking about, the number of people that are repeating services. I do really appreciate that. And I think data will help us as we understand how those dollars are being spent. Although that does harken back to my earlier comments around what's within our purview and what's not. So there might be individuals that are continually utilizing our services because they don't have access to behavioral health. And that is, we've had conversations about city expansion of behavioral health, and that is not something that we really do. And it is interesting to look at, whether that's county or the state and where is it that we need this support, and how do we get that from our partners. So I think that'll be really interesting to look at, as well as that if we're seeing kind of these cycles, one, where do we need to look to break the cycle, but also where do we need help in breaking it? So my other question has to do with the day center, and we've had a lot of conversation around congregating all services or scattered sites. And so I have that same question around day centers. Is the idea that we would eventually, well, one, potentially, if we get to a place where we have 24-hour access to an individual's, temporary shelter, whether it's a pallet community or Consuelos or a master lease, maybe we wouldn't need, well, we may still need day centers, but in terms of congregating them all in one location or scattered sites for day centers, when it comes to both ease of access for individuals who need to access it, as well as mitigating any negative impacts on the neighborhoods, is there any research information that you've seen about that, and where are you thinking in that arena?
Madam Chair, councilors, if I understand the question correctly, I think I'd answer it in two ways. One is that I'd want to distinguish saying that day services would also include congregate or
Correct. They're separate.
living, right?
Yeah.
So while we are moving forward with a scattered site model,
Mhm.
and scattered is the wrong word. We want to be intentional about how we're engaging in this. So that's
Multi-site.
right. Dispersed amongst the community, across the city. That is strategic and intentional. On the same side, just like a hospital has a lot of different types of services in one location, there's efficiencies by that. So when people can go to one location to get a lot of their needs met, that benefits a lot of moving people along those goals. So that's why we want to try and aggregate services to one location, but then have people, just as people live across the whole city, having the micro communities not in all one location, but instead dispersed across the city. So just wanted to make that distinction that there's a real benefit to having services aggregated in one location because it allows a person to get a driver's license, sign up for SNAP if it still exists, or access a variety of different types of services that folks need to kind of continue the progress towards where they're trying to go in their life.
Right, like a one-stop shop. Yes, and I definitely agree that having all of those services in one place. So I'll just tell you where my concern comes from. We talk about Surrios a lot, and part of the problem is that everything has been on Surrios. And so, to Councilor Faulkner's point around, the kind of, I did like the way she phrased it around, this movement of safety concerns that are not necessarily, it's a mixed population. I always say there's a Venn diagram. But one of the concerns has been because everything is on Surrios, that is why we have seen just this influx, because people know where to go for these challenges, and everything is there. So if you're somebody who is looking to sell drugs, you know that if you go to this area, you potentially can find somebody a lot faster than if you're kind of scouring around the city. So I think that is where my question comes from around, is it better to have one one-stop shop, or kind of multiple one-stop shops, so that we don't necessarily have this conglomeration of challenges that come up with this population?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I think I'd want to maybe put the resourcing aspect in here, which is, I think, in an ideal world, you have one hospital on one side of town and one hospital on the other side of town, so that if you're somewhere, you can get access to the service you need close by to your home. I think in a world of scarce resources, we start with one thing, and then if we can fund, more locations, that makes sense. But I think starting with at least one makes a lot of sense. there are capacity constraints in the city
Right.
and in the state, right? There's just not enough providers. So understanding the ideal is different than
Yeah.
what we can actually have at this moment.
Okay, yeah, and I understand that, and that is often, our reality is that we can, there is the ideal and we have to deal with what we have. So that being said, I think that, on the front end, being aware of that potential and, making, putting in plans to mitigate that and to prevent that, from the get-go, as opposed to what we are dealing with within Interfaith, where it's kind of grown up around it, and now we're trying to, to deal with that after the fact.
Madam Chair, if I may, I would also say that like some of this is a design issue and it's something that intentional planning can address. Making sure that, for instance, people, if as we look to invest in and establish a day service center in the city, making it a place that has a single egress and allows people to be inside the facility while they're waiting, so there's not spillover into the street. Similarly, making sure that just as we do with the micro communities has 24/7 security, making sure that security is integrated into the plan and essential to the plan as we build it out. So I think some of these are things that we can design intentionally around to address at the beginning.
Okay, great, thank you, and I'm glad that is being thought of, and of course, I know that there are, we can learn from other communities and other centers, and that there are a lot of good lessons learned. I think that was all I had. Yes, city manager.
Thank you. I just want to ask a question of the counselors. Have you all seen, other than the one we have in town, have you all visited these micro communities, pallet shelters? Because to see them is to understand how well they work. I mean,
I've only seen the one at
seen
Christian Life.
many of them. I've been involved in building a couple of them. I think it would be worth taking a road trip and going to see some of these places, because as much as we'd like to do, I mean, you all have said this, we can't do everything. And as much as we'd like to figure out the solutions to every issue that's out there, we've got to stay focused on what is, I believe, the policy of the city, which is to seek this kind of transitional housing and eventually permanent housing, and eventually to not need the kinds of shelters we've got, although I'm not convinced we'll ever not need any shelters. I'm not convinced of that. I know there's a philosophy to get there, but I'm not sure that happens. But we've really got to stay focused on getting these communities out there. I mean, they really do work. They really don't bother neighborhoods. That's not to say put them in residential neighborhoods. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they're really that effective, that they don't cause that kind of trouble. And that needs to be the focus that we really need to put our time and effort in, as well as cooperating with all those other entities that are part of this whole continuum of care network. And those, it seems to me, are the things that the staff really needs to stay focused and get done. Because I entirely agree about enforcement. We've got to do more to deal with the visible impacts that people see every day, because it's hurting us in our ability to do the things we do need to. And there are things that we need to do every day that aren't just doing the pallet shelters, but I get worried that we spend so much time talking about these issues. I want him working on getting these things built. And I'm afraid we're spending so much time talking all the time that we're not actually spending the time we need to do going out and getting these things done. And I highly recommend that if we need to take a road trip and see these places, not just the one that we've got here, which is wonderful. It works. I think it works great. But they all have services, they all have security, and they work. And so I'm sitting here a long time, and I just feel like, okay, let's go do it. Let's go get something done. And I think it's time.
Well, I do appreciate that perspective, and because and I'm sorry, it's not Christian Life, it's Christ Lutheran. Got the place correct. But I think that also, to your point, that'd be wonderful if, we can go on a road trip, our entire community can't. So I am curious how we can bring, whether it's, getting some of the neighbors from these areas, getting videos, how can we actually bring that information to the city? And I as we work at having these conversations with our community members, because you're right, we do talk a lot, and part of the problem that I've seen, at least with my constituents, is the only example they have seen is one that has really not worked for them. So I am curious how we can
Meaning what?
interfaith. I mean, Pete, so long, that really has not
I
worked for
agree.
them.
That's not the road trip I want you to take.
Right. So I am curious how we actually can potentially, and we talked about this at the last meeting, Director Hammond Paul, how can we bring that information, even if people can't go to Springs or Denver or Portland, how might we really be able to bring that information here in a way that they can,
Take
yeah.
some people with you. There's video programs that we can do to show people what these things look like. People have it in their minds that we're going to put, and I'd love to have 30 at a site, not just a few, not just 10. I think you can make bigger impacts if you have them a little bigger, and they work just fine. But people have this image that you're going to put these places into effect, and they're going to have people standing all around them all day like at Pete's. To get it in their head that that's what it's. All we're going to do is we're going to create another shelter, and people are going to be all around selling drugs. That's not what happens at these pallet shelters. That's just not what happens. And you build them so that they're pleasant looking. It looks a little funny to put people in little tiny houses. I understand that, but it works. And the people you put in those houses love it. And so I'd like people to see that and understand that what we're trying to do is not just creating lots of little shelters. That's not what we're doing. And it's time to do that because people want to have something different than what they're seeing year after year. And that's how we're going to get there. We're not going to get there by building more shelters. We're not just going to get there by putting services on the street. We've got to give people places to live. And I think we're so ready to do that we just really got to make that our initiative. We've got to move. You can tell I'm ready to go.
Well, thank you. And I really appreciate that perspective, and really appreciate, especially, you sharing your experience and having seen these. So thank you for letting us know about that.
Ready to know that.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Anytime. Well, I believe we had gotten to the end of my questioning. It is getting late in the evening, and I know this is far from the last time that we will see you and be discussing this topic. So I really want to thank you so much for being here and for all your work and for really spearheading such a challenging issue. So thank you. I will keep rolling along. We are now to matters from staff. Director Nelson.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair and councilors. We have a couple of updates I'd love to make sure you're aware of. First of all, I want to say thanks to our staff and publicly acknowledge we've had a sun down, I can barely talk, day with a lot of events. It was great seeing Councilor I'm doing it now to you. Councilor Garcia at the Built for Business event that Land Use put on. Really collaborative team effort, supporting business owners in the community. And then we also had our investment equity finance fair today at the airport. And we had over 100 people register. It was alive and vibrant with folks from the community connecting with equity investors and resources for businesses. And it was really positive, really great turnout. We also had a CDC meeting today, and I just want to make sure that you're aware that we had the public meeting today to move forward with the recommendations for the CDBG funding. So you'll be getting notifications on that. And as well, I think we're waiting for some updates internally and some discussions on the next steps for Affordable Housing Trust Fund. No movements have been made there. And we do have an outdoor recreation event coming up March 27th. Would love for you to come to that. That'll be at the Higher Education Center. And I wish everybody a really great spring break that will be next week. And I also want to full of gratitude today, but the city just announced an early registration for city staff to take advantage of applying for the summer program for employees. Really grateful being a working parent, and kudos to the recreation team for their aftercare program as well as their summer care program. And I'm gonna call it there. Thank you so much. Available for questions and any support you guys need. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Director. Director Hammond-Paul, anything else from you today?
Quick transition from the presentation to the good news side of things. I'll do a better job at having this for the next one, but also just want to laud the amazing programs that my team is doing at the rec centers, the libraries, the senior centers. Lots of really amazing work happening and serving the community. So youth programs, I believe will be opening soon. I don't have the dates in front of me, but I can send that all out so you can share it with your constituents, as well as the numerous leagues and events at the libraries and so forth.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Director. Loretta, do you have anything for us today?
Do not, Madam Chair. Thank you for asking.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again for being here. Really, really appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
Yes, of course.
Madam Chair, thank you so much. I completely forgot. We are planning an event on April 2nd, and this is an affordable housing development meetup that will be hosted right now at the Association for Realtors. And we did send that out to a test and pilot of a new communications network we're trying to build in the Office of Affordable Housing. If you didn't get it, let me know and I'll go ahead and send that out to you, because I'm hearing that that's why we're trying to create this list and make sure that notifications are getting out to community and leaders. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any matters for members of the committee? Councilor Castro.
I just want to thank everyone for all the hard work. The Immigration Committee had its first meeting this last week, so we're rolling with that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for letting us know. Matters from the chair, I have none. Our next meeting is Wednesday, April 2nd, and at 7:14 p.m. we are adjourned. Thank you.